When Mass Effect 3 came out 11 years ago, 11? Seriously? When Mass Effect 3 came out, it was seen as a disappointment. While it was a great game with 3 strong acts, the ending was expected to be the culmination of the whole trilogy's worth of decisions. Instead, we were met with this little kid who merely looked at us and said,
"The paths are open, but you have to choose."
having all of our actions over 3 games lead to, hey, pick your ending, robbed us of the authority we assumed we had.
So be it.
Why did we assume that? What about Mass Effect really spoke to us, told us that our actions really mattered? Was Mass Effect ever anything more than a Final Fantasy game set in space? Well, you can guess I'm going to argue that no, it wasn't, and neither are a lot of the games we tend to associate with that elusive player agency. First, we need a definition. I looked for some online, and they all seem to be some form of this: when the decisions of the player affect the story or the world. It's quaint but ambiguous, in that it'd include games like Skylines or The Sims, and I don't think that's what people are talking about when they talk about player agency. For player agency to matter, it has to be in the context of something: a plot arc, a deadline, a goal, quintessentially, an end. So let's say, when the decision of the player affects the story or the world in a game with a narrative. Now that's better, but it's not perfect, and I'm sorry if this is becoming convoluted. How about when the decisions of the player affect the story or the world dynamically in a game with a narrative? Why? Because without this, you could say Mass Effect 3 had tons of player agency. You're choosing how to end a millions-year-long cycle and save every species in the galaxy, or don't save them. What could be bigger than this? Well, the problem is, it's binary. Well, it's actually technically quartery, and yes, I did have to look that word up. But the choice is handed to us on a silver platter. There's no question of what we're doing, what the outcomes will be. Choosing is the last thing you do in the game, and the choice will affect the ending and nothing else. And in case you're wondering, yes, shooting the kid is the good ending. Comment section if you want to debate it. So what do I mean then when I say dynamically? Well, let's talk about a game with just enough agency to hit the bar. Let's talk about Metro Exodus. In case it comes off, yeah, I didn't really like this game, but that's a whole other topic. End of the day, it did have player agency. You see, while it only had 2 endings, you were never presented with an option to choose. During the course of the game, points are accrued, and if you get enough of them, you get the good ending. Of course, you are never told this implicitly. It's hinted at, but it's never spelt out, and you never know for sure what actions count or how many points you already have. And unless you're really perceptive, you won't even notice that there's a sound that plays when you tally a point. You can play the whole game and never even know that this system existed or that there was another ending. This is player agency at its simplest, and it's why I picked this example. So while we're here, what game is the best example of player agency? Well, I think we all know the answer to that question. One of the best games ever made. The poster model for player agency is RimWorld. Of course it's RimWorld. You're not just in a narrative, you're fighting it, and everything that goes down, win or lose, is on you. After that first win, that none of us save scummed for, of course, you can start a new game and you'll impose your own rules and goals, something that you're going to do different because you can. You can sit back and give ambiguous orders, you can micromanage your colonists, you can start your first commitment run and wind up with a fish-shaped hole in your monitor. Whatever you do, there's one thing indisputable. There's not a person on the planet who's had the same run as you. That first time I saw the ending slide, which is just a black background with some white text, I almost cried. I was genuinely happy for those tiny little unanimated, expressionless sprites that were my colonists. Side note, watching RimWorld colonists dance is the single greatest thing in the history of mankind. This is better than the moon landing. Let's roll back to New Vegas though. There's a reason we all associate player agency with New Vegas. If you want dialogue or scripted events and quests, or nuanced, meaningful plot arcs, you have to sacrifice some agency. What New Vegas does right is balance. You get to be part of the world, in first or third person, and still have meaningful impact. On a scale from presentation to agency, New Vegas slots in at that sweet spot that suits us like a big, comfy chair. That's not to say that all games have to do this. You can make good games that don't have player agency at all. As a matter of fact, some would say you can have your cake and eat it too. One thing most AAA publishers love is set-piece moments. Tight corridors and linear fights, highly choreographed timing, look great on trailers. Let's be honest, are a lot of fun to play too. Problem is, they're expensive, and the publishers don't want to fork out for a whole bunch of gameplay that only half the players will play. Enter a studio like BioWare, noteworthy and exceptional in the field of player agency, adapting to this new medium of presentation. They wanted to make a new game series, loaded with both the best in gaming cinematics, but also loaded with moments where your decisions, as the player, would matter. How did they do it?
Sic semper tyrann free.
Yeah, they faked it. Let's narrow it down to Mass Effect 2, because that's the one everyone points to. Mass Effect 2 has 18 story missions. You're going to do these, and they're the same no matter what. There's a small allowance for order, but you're going to do them all, so that's not agency. The DLC, also linear. So what choices are yours? Well, there are 11 loyalty missions. These you can do or not do in any order you want, and they're a substantial part of the game. Most of the truly memorable missions are the loyalty missions, because this game is about characters, and these missions are exactly that. There's also the dialogue choices, and those are huge. The difference between an emotional Shepard and a professional Shepard changed the entire tone of the game. All in all, these choices make for a truly unique experience, where we use all of our skill and cunning to save the galaxy, and the results of our decisions play out in this 8-second cutscene. Yes, this is the total result of our choices. How many of our guys lived? This game has a scorecard, and this is it. This is because our experience wasn't unique. All those dialogue choices, we were trained very early on in a genuinely Pavlovian way that we always want to pick the same dialogue choices. It's either all blue or all red, or you're not getting that perfect scorecard. So we pick one. But it takes more than that to get the perfect scorecard, right? I mean, how many people actually got out of the collector base with 0 losses? Yeah, it was all of us. All of us pulled that off. And most of us did it on the first try. It was pretty clear how to do it. Most of us even passed the save the crew check, which is possibly the best hidden check in the game. But is that not still agency? I mean, we did make the dialogue choices. We did do those loyalty missions. We didn't have to do them. We're just, we're badass like that, right? We went down the list of things that we could do to get the job done, and we said, yep, all of it. But if you can choose everything, are you really choosing anything? No. The answer I'm looking for is no. What they absolutely nailed was the illusion of agency. If you narrow dialogue choices down to 4, you can usually predict what we'll press, so you don't really need to flesh out the other options. You can make it possible to get a bad ending, knowing that no one will. Did you know you can beat Mass Effect 2 without ever going to the Citadel? Ask yourself, why did you go to the Citadel? Well, you went to the Citadel because it's the Citadel, and of course you went to the Citadel. Next I'll be asking why the chicken crossed the road. If you really want to see this in action, really get a feel for it, next time you play the trilogy, use a mod that maxes out your Paragon and Renegade at the start, so you don't feel obligated to answer a specific way. Just answer the questions however you would if you were Shepard. You'll probably be all over the map, even avoid some of the colored options sometimes. How much do you think it'll affect the ending? I'll give you one guess.
Ready for your close-up?
Wait! I'll give you the secret of the Apocalypse. Just leave me my mask!
Smile, Kilbane. We're going nationwide.
No!
Oh, wow! It's shades of Angel de la Muerte as Kilbane has been demasked. Yes, we have.
I'm not kidding though, I would recommend playing through the game like that at least once. It is so much better to not have to worry about whether or not you'll be able to answer a question in a way that you would answer the question yourself. It's just better. It's just a better way to play it. Let's move on from Mass Effect to Fallout 4 and the Outer Worlds. Of course, since I played the Outer Worlds on a trial of Xbox Live and I didn't think to record any of it, we'll just be looking at Fallout 4 footage. The Outer Worlds was supposed to be the game that showed Bethesda how to make a Fallout game. And coming from the New Vegas guys, it was a claim that had clout. I don't think Obsidian itself ever tried to make the claim, but they sure didn't try to stifle it either. Perception can be a powerful thing. The opening, or tutorial planet, presents you with a problem. The seemingly simple rich versus needy problem that quickly proves to be a fair bit more complicated. It doesn't matter which side you choose, either way was a pretty good moral choice that you have to own. Front-loading this choice was genius because it sets the tone for the game, and it's the last difficult choice you're gonna have to make. There's nothing ambiguous about the ending. You won't choose an ending based on moral grounds. It's good or evil, and you won't confuse them. Good and bad endings each only have one exclusive mission, and they share the final mission except with different color uniforms. You'll be able to see both sets of end slides by loading a save less than 90 minutes old. In the exclusive evil mission, you have to go to your companion Pavardi's hometown and kill everyone. Now, I was going for the evil ending at this point, so I brought Pavardi along so that she could help. You know how she reacted? Well, before the final mission, she says, "You don't have to watch your back, because I'll be watching it for you." And she wasn't being cynical. I never got stabbed in the back. I suppose that's because I helped her hook up with the engineer lady, which was a very sweet side story, I have to admit. Easily the most memorable part of the game, and it was a fetch quest. Well, how about Fallout 4 then? 4 different factions, all of which you'll see walking around the map. 3 of them you can turn against you at any time, for any reason, from I disagree fundamentally with their worldview to their armor sells for a lot. Also, roaming hostile vertibirds in the late game is awesome. There are 4 different endings that play out differently, none of which actually end the game, so afterwards you can walk around and see the results of what you chose. You can start towns all over the map, and it's not just a loading screen, you can actually build the damn things, and people move in if they think it looks livable. Fallout 4 had its faults, for sure, but it didn't lack player agency. Realistically, it had more agency than New Vegas. What New Vegas had that Fallout 4 didn't have was substantially more interesting choices. But either way, comparing it to the Outer Worlds, those rose-colored glasses are practically blinders.
Watch your back. The Institute could be right behind you.
So how about Baldur's Gate 3? That is Shadowheart in the preview, after all. I can't possibly be claiming that Baldur's Gate 3 doesn't have player agency. Well, don't worry. That's exactly what I'm claiming. So while the setting in Baldur's Gate 3 is during a war, the story is a lot more personal. It starts with you having something put in your head. It turns out this is a sentient entity, and you can either fight it or embrace it, and it will become you. Oh wait, wrong footage. So it starts out with you getting something put in your head. It turns out to be a sentient entity, and you can either fight it or embrace it, and it will become you. Am I the only one who caught this? Man, I hated Johnny Silverhands. He was the leash you wore the entire game. The excuse to why you couldn't just do whatever you wanted. He embodied the limitations of presentation over player agency. Everything that happened, it was going to happen no matter what you did. And there he was, a constant reminder of it. And so was our friend here. The limitations on your agency are laid bare when you reject his advances.
You are my puppet. Make no mistake, without me, you have no value. You will take me to the brain because you have no other choice. And once we are there, you will do exactly what I tell you to. And you would do well to reconsider unlocking your potential. Your puerile attachment to your material form jeopardizes us all. If I must, I will force you.
You aren't even the main character in this game. He is. There is a way to turn on him, I'm sure not as hell calling it a betrayal, but it's at the very end of the game. And you know what happens if you do? Either yourself, Karlach, or one other character have to become a mind player, because only a mind player can take down the end boss. I'll say that again. Only a mind player can take down the end boss. There are a series of dice rolls at the end, and you can pass all of them. If you're not a mind player, it doesn't matter. Your build doesn't matter. Everything about your character doesn't matter. To make matters worse,
You had the opportunity to surrender yourself to my honor guard. They would have given you a noble end. Any worthy individual destined to become Geik would have done so. My guard would have freed me, and I would have stopped the Elder Brain before it evolved into a Nether Brain. All that suffering, avoidable, were it not for the choices you made.
Overlooking the fact that no, we were never actually given that choice, what this guy here is actually saying is that if we had never shown up, this situation would have resolved itself anyway. Okay, so it narrows down at the end a bit, but surely there's a ton of agency before that. I mean, all those times where instead of having a fight, you could talk your way out of it.
Some part of you must still realize this is wrong. You can fight this.
Maybe you're right.
And there were the loyalty missions. We could choose not to do the loyalty missions, right?
You used me as bait?
Go.
What about romance? What about all those factions you helped? Surely they made a difference at the end.
Something of debts. If you reckon you've got one to repay, well, we could always work together.
Gotta hand it to you, Commander. That's the first time I've seen someone end a war by yelling.
And thus, I honor my mother's legacy. The grand design, once again, ended by my line.
The brain is on the cusp of its final thought, and it's taking all of Orpheus's strength to keep it there. An opportunity, perhaps.
The paths are open, but you have to choose.
I'd like to finish by circling back to Final Fantasy, because I'm playing Final Fantasy 15 right now, and that means it's easy to get footage. I found myself thinking about why this game and 16 were so much better received than Final Fantasy 13. It's not like this game has more agency. No Final Fantasy games have player agency. It's not what they do. Final Fantasy X was a straight line from Besaid to Zanarkand, and people loved that game. I loved that game. So why did people hate 13? Well, I think it's because they didn't even try to pretend you had any agency. They had a story to tell, and they figured that's what we were here for. They were wrong. We wanted agency, we said. But we didn't. What we wanted was what we got in Mass Effect. Or Cyberpunk. Or The Outer Worlds.
Killed 2 souls.
Or Baldur's Gate. We want the illusion of agency. On a lighter note, if you have your bard play next to NPCs with instruments, they'll join in. Second best thing ever.
Let us show them how it's done.
There we go.